Right. Hey, it's April 18th, Saturday, and the 18th day of National Poetry Month, and like the 43rd day, I think, of the pandemic. Some friends on Facebook were talking about, well, laughing about the fact that nobody knows what day it is anymore and sharing the things that they do to sort of mark the time. And I realized this is what I do to mark the time. So if you are doing this with me, happy to have you along. Otherwise, oh right, repping a little like Gallery School theater production and some remnants of sourdough baking this morning. Yeah, I made some banana bread and some pizza dough for later. So anyway, we left off book 7, focused on, well, on a number of things, on Adam's curiosity, on Raphael's desire, willingness to share, a version of events that is accessible to human brains. Yeah, I don't know. We have a picture of, in book 6, a picture of the war between the loyal angels and the rebellious angels. And in book 7, we have the description of the creation of the world that Adam knows and everything that Adam can see and Adam himself. And Adam asks for that, like, more, please tell me more about this world and about like when I came into being and how and why. Knowing that he probably shouldn't be asking for it. He's asking for more than he is entitled to somehow. And at the end of book 7, Raphael says, that's all that story. Everything else, I've worked you up to what you will remember yourself. Everything else, from then on, obviously, Are you satisfied? Is your curiosity satisfied, or do you have a desire to know more? Either way, be sure that you do not follow the path of Satan and rebel. It's the perpetual warning from Raphael to Adam. So anyway, I'm going to pick up in book 8 and go to around line 360, I think, around there. Anyway, here we go. Book 8. The arguments. Adam inquires. Adam inquires. I do know how to read. Adam inquires concerning celestial motions, is doubtfully answered, and exhorted to search rather things more worthy of knowledge. Adam assents, and still desirous to detain Raphael, relates to him what he remembered since his own creation. Circle the desirous. His own creation. His placing in paradise, his talk with God concerning solitude and fit society, his first meeting and nuptials with Eve, his discourse with the angel thereupon, who after admonitions repeated departs. So interesting counterpart to what we got in book 4, where we saw Eve, or where we got to hear Eve describe her own first instances and her first notion of herself, which was instantaneous, to Adam, what it was like to be created. Well, not what it was like to be created, but what it was like in the moments immediately after creation, I guess in consciousness, or whatever, consciousness in the form that she enjoys now as a living human. So yeah, this will be an interesting counterpoint. So book 4, now we're in book 8. I'm sure that is not coincidental. And yeah, obviously Adam's curiosity was not satisfied. I know we're not surprised by that either. Okay. The angel ended, and in Adam's ear so charming leapt his voice, that he a while thought him still speaking, still stood fixed to hear. Then was new waked, thus gratefully replied, what thanks sufficient, or what recompense equal, have I to render thee, divine historian, who thus largely hast allayed the thirst I had of knowledge, and vouchsafed this friendly condescension to relate things else by me unsearchable, now heard with wonder, but delight, and, as is due, with glory attributed to the high Creator. Something yet of doubt remains, which only thy solution can resolve. When I behold this goodly frame, this world of heaven and earth consisting, and compute their magnitudes, this earth a spot, a grain, an atom, with the firmament compared and all her numbered stars, that seem to roll spaces incomprehensible, for such their distance argues, and their swift return diurnal, merely to officiate light round this opacous earth, this punctual spot, one day and night. In all their vast survey, useless besides. Reasoning I oft admire, how nature wise and frugal could commit such disproportions with superfluous hand so many nobler bodies to create, greater so manifold, to this one use, or aught appears, and on their orbs imposed such restless revolution, day by day repeated, while the sedentary earth, that better might with far less compass move, served by more noble than herself, attains her end without least motion, and receives as tribute such a sumless journey brought of incorporeal speed, her warmth and light, speed to describe whose swiftness number fails. So spake our sire, and by his countenance seemed entering on studious thoughts abstruse, which Eve perceiving where she sat retired in sight, with lowliness majestic from her seat, and grace that one who saw to wish her stay, rose, and went forth among her fruits and flowers, to visit how they prospered, bud and bloom, her nursery. They at her coming, sprung and touched by her fair attendants, gladlier grew. Yet went she not, as not with such discourse delighted, or not capable her ear of what was high. Such pleasure she reserved, Adam relating, she sole auditress. Her husband the relator she preferred before the angel, and of him to ask chose rather. He, she knew, would intermix grateful digressions, and solve high dispute with conjugal caresses. From his lip not words alone pleased her. Oh, when meet now such pairs in love and mutual honor joined, with goddess-like demeanor forth she went, not unattended, for on her as queen a pomp of winning graces waited still, and from about her shot darts of desire into all eyes to wish her still in sight. And Raphael now and to Adam's doubt proposed, benevolent and facile, thus replied, to ask or search I blame thee not, for heaven is as the book of God before thee set, wherein to read his wondrous works and learn his seasons, hours, or days, or months, or years, this to attain. Whether heaven move or earth imports not, if thou reckon right. The rest from man or angel the great architect did wisely to conceal, and not divulge his secrets to be scanned by them who ought rather admire. Or if they list to try conjecture, he his fabric of the heavens hath left to their disputes, perhaps to move his laughter at their quaint opinions wide hereafter, when they come to model heaven and calculate the stars, how they will wield the mighty frame, how build, unbuild, contrive to save appearances, how gird the sphere with centric and eccentric scribbled o'er, cycle and epicycle, orb in orb. Already by thy reasoning, this I guess, who art to lead thy offspring, and supposest that bodies bright and greater should not serve the less not bright, nor heaven such journeys run, earth sitting still, when she alone receives the benefit. Consider first, that great or bright infers not excellence. The earth, though, in comparison of heaven, so small, nor glistering, may of solid good contain more plenty than the sun that barren shines, whose virtue on itself works no effect, but in the fruitful earth. There first received his beams, unactive else, their vigor find. Yet not to earth are those bright luminaries officious, but to thee, earth's habitant. And for the heaven's wide circuit, let it speak the Maker's high magnificence, who built so spacious, and his line stretched out so far, that man may know he dwells not on his own, an edifice too large for him to fill, lodged in a small partition, and the rest ordained for uses to his Lord best known. The swiftness of those circles attribute, though numberless, to his omnipotence, that to corporeal substances could add speed almost spiritual. Me thou thinkest not slow, who since the morning hour set out from heaven where God resides, and ere midday arrived in Eden, distance inexpressible by numbers that have name. But this I urge, admitting motion to the heavens, to show invalid that which thee to doubt it moved. Not that I so affirm, though so it seem, to thee who hast thy dwelling here on earth. God, to remove his ways from human sense, placed heaven from earth so far that earthly sight, if it presume, might err in things too high, and no advantage gain. What if the sun be center to the world, and other stars by his attractive virtue and their own incited, dance about him various rounds? Their wandering course now high, now low, then hid, progressive, retrograde, or standing still, in sixth thou seest, and what if seventh to these the planet Earth, so steadfast though she seem, insensibly three different motions move? Which else to several spheres thou must ascribe, moved contrary, with thwart obliquities, or save the sun his labor, and that swift nocturnal and diurnal rom, supposed, invisible else above all stars, the wheel of day and night, which needs not thy belief if earth industrious of herself fetch day the traveling east, and with her part averse from the sun's beam meet night, her other part still luminous by his ray. What if that light sent from her through the wide transpicuous air to the terrestrial moon be as a star enlightening her by day, as she by night this earth? Reciprocal, if land be there, fields and inhabitants. Her spots thou seest as clouds, and clouds may rain, and rain produce fruits in her softened soil, for some to eat allotted there. And other suns, perhaps, with their attendant moons, thou wilt descry communicating male and female light, which two great sexes animate the world, stored in each orb, perhaps with some that live. For such vast room in nature unpossessed by living soul, desert and desolate, only to shine, yet scarce to contribute each orb a glimpse of light, conveyed so far down to this habitable, which returns light back to them, is obvious to dispute. But whether thus these things, or whether not, whether the sun predominant in heaven rise on the earth, or earth rise on the sun, he from the east his flaming road begin, or she from west her silent course advance with inoffensive pace that spinning sleeps on her soft axle, while she paces even, and bears thee soft with the smooth air along, solicit not thy thought with matters hid. Leave them to God above, him serve and fear. Of other creatures, as him pleases best, wherever placed, let him dispose. Joy thou in what he gives to thee, this paradise and thy fair Eve. Heaven is for thee too high to know what passes there. Be lowly wise. Think only what concerns thee and thy being. Dream not of other worlds, what creatures there live, in what state, condition, or degree, contented that thus far hath been revealed not of earth only, but of highest heaven. To whom thus Adam, cleared of doubt, replied, how fully hast thou satisfied me, pure intelligence of heaven, angel serene, and freed from intricacies, taught to live the easiest way, nor with perplexing thoughts to interrupt the sweet of life, from which God hath bid far off all anxious cares, and not molest us, lest we ourselves seek them with wandering thoughts and notions vain. But apt the mind or fancy is to rove unchecked, and of her roving is no end. Till warned or by experience taught, she learns that not to know at large of things remote from use, obscure and subtle, but to know that which before us lies in daily life is the prime wisdom. What is more is fume or emptiness or fond impertinence, and renders us in things that most concern unpracticed, unprepared, and still to seek. And therefore, from this high pitch, let us descend a lower flight and speak of things at hand useful, whence haply mention may arise of something not unseasonable to ask by sufferance, and thy wonted favor deigned. Thee I have heard relating what has done ere my remembrance. Now hear me relate my story, which perhaps thou hast not heard, and day is not yet spent. Till then thou seest how subtly to detain thee I devise, inviting thee to hear while I relate, fond were it not in hope of thy reply. For while I sit with thee, I seem in heaven, and sweeter thy discourse is to my ear than fruits of palm tree, pleasantest to thirst and hunger both, from labor, at the hour of sweet repast. They satiate and soon fill, though pleasant, but thy words with grace divine imbued, bring to their sweetness no satiety. To whom thus Raphael answered, heavenly meek, Nor are thy lips ungraceful, sire of men, nor tongue ineloquent. For God on thee abundantly has poured his gifts, hath also poured, for God on thee abundantly his gifts hath also poured inward and outward both, his image fair. Speaking or mute, all comeliness and grace attends thee, and each word, each motion forms. Nor think less we in heaven of thee on earth than of our fellow servant, and inquire gladly into the ways of God with man. For God, we see, hath honored thee, and set on man his equal love. Say therefore on, for I that day was absent, as befell, bound on a voyage uncouth and obscure, far on excursion toward the gates of hell, squared in full legion, such command we had, to see that none thence issued forth a spy or enemy, while God was in his work, lest he incensed at such eruption bold destruction with creation might have mixed. Not that they durst without his leave attempt, but us he sends upon his high behests for state, as sovereign king, and to inure our prompt obedience. Fast we found, fast shut the dismal gates, and barricadoed strong. But long ere our approaching heard within noise, other than the sound of dance or song, torment, and loud lament, and furious rage. Glad we returned up the coasts of light ere Sabbath evening, so we had in charge. But thy relation now, for I attend, pleased with thy words no less than thou with mine. So spake the godlike power, and thus our sire. For man to tell how human life began is hard. For who himself beginning knew? Desire with thee still longer to converse induced me. As new waked from soundest sleep, soft on the flowery herb I found me laid in balmy sweat, which with his beams the sun soon dried, and on the reeking moisture fed. Straight toward heaven my wondering eyes I turned, and gazed awhile the ample sky, till raised by quick instinctive motion, up I sprung, as thitherward endeavoring, and upright stood on my feet. About me round I saw hill, dale, and shady woods, and sunny plains, and liquid laps of murmuring streams. By these, creatures that lived and moved and walked or flew, birds on the branches and warbling, all things smiled, with fragrance and with joy my heart o'erflowed. Myself I then perused, and limb by limb surveyed, and sometimes went, and sometimes ran with supple joints, as lively vigor led. But who I was, or where, or from what cause, knew not. To speak I tried, and forthwith spake, my tongue obeyed, and readily could name whate'er I saw. Thou sun, said I, fair light, and thou enlightened earth, so fresh and gay, ye hills and dales, ye rivers, woods, and plains, and ye that live and move, fair creatures, tell if ye saw, how I came thus, how here. Not of myself, by some great maker then, in goodness and in power preeminent. Tell me how I may know him, how adore from whom I have that thus I move and live, and feel that I am happier than I know. While thus I called, and strayed I knew not whither, from where I first drew air, and first beheld this happy light, when answer none returned, on a green shady bank profuse of flowers, pensive I sat me down. There gentle sleep first found me, and with soft oppression seized my drowsed sense, untroubled, though I thought I then was passing to my former state insensible, and forthwith to dissolve. When suddenly stood in my head a dream, whose inward apparition gently moved my fancy to believe I had yet being and lived. One came, methought, of shape divine, and said, Thy mansion wants thee, Adam. Rise, first man, of men innumerable ordained first father. Called by thee, I come thy guide to the garden of bliss, thy seat prepared. So saying, by the hand he took me raised, and over fields and waters, as in air smooth sliding without step, last led me up a woody mountain, whose high top was plain, a circuit wide, enclosed, with goodliest trees planted, with walks and bowers, that what I saw of earth before scarce pleasant seemed. Each tree, loaden with fairest fruit that hung to the eye tempting, stirred in me sudden appetite to pluck and eat. Whereat I waked and found before mine eyes all real, as the dream had lively shadowed. Here had new begun my wandering. Had not he who was my guide up hither from among the trees appeared, presence divine. Rejoicing, but with awe and adoration at his feet, I fell submiss. He reared me. Whom thou soughtest, I am, said mildly. Author of all this thou seest above, or round about thee, or beneath. This paradise I give thee, count it thine, to till and keep, and of the fruit to eat. Of every tree that in the garden grows, eat freely with glad heart. Fear here no dearth, but of the tree whose operation brings knowledge of good and ill, which I have set the pledge of thy obedience and thy faith, amid the garden by the tree of life. Remember what I warn thee, shun to taste, and shun the bitter consequence. For know the day thou eatest thereof, my sole command transgressed, inevitably thou shalt die. From that day, mortal, and this happy state shalt lose, expelled from hence into a world of woe and sorrow. Sternly he pronounced the rigid interdiction, which resounds yet dreadful in mine ear, though in my choice not to incur. But soon his clear aspect returned, and gracious purpose thus renewed. Not only these fair bounds, but all the earth to thee and to thy race I give, as lords possess it, and all things that herein live, or live in sea or air, beast, fish, and fowl. In sign whereof each bird and beast behold after their kinds, I bring them to receive from thee their names, and pay thee fealty with low subjection. Understand the same of fish within her watery residence, not hither summoned, since they cannot change their element to draw the thinner air. And thus he spake. Each bird and beast beheld approaching two and two, these cowering low with blandishment. Each bird stooped on his wing. I named them as they passed, and understood their nature. With such knowledge God endued my sudden apprehension. But in these I found not what methought I wanted still, and to the heavenly vision thus presumed. All right, that's it for today. In the middle of Adam naming all the things that he apparently recognized and knew from the beginning, and not finding the thing that he wanted. Halfway through his tale, probably, as we are halfway through book 8. So, more tomorrow. All right, bye.